All right. All right. We should be live. Give me one more second. I'm going to plug a microphone in here. Hopefully my volume is good this time. I'm going to try to block out the fan again by doing this. Are you okay at this point? Anybody out there? All right. So we're going to be looking at this song yesterday. I saw the movie yesterday a couple of days ago, and I was thinking it might turn out to be a good thing to use for an ELA example. The actual verse versus the passage of the song is actually a poem. So what I suggest to do is I have no idea what kind of copyright issues are involved with this. So I would just suggest people um, bring it up. I'll give people a second. In the meantime, you could try to solve this puzzle that I popped up here. I don't know who originated the puzzle either. I didn't. I tried to find out where it came from, and I couldn't. So I cannot give accreditation to it. It seems to be on various places on the internet without being characterized who created it. So in the meantime, um, bring up the lyrics for yesterday on your computer or your device in a separate tab or something. Most of you probably have heard the lyrics, even if you're not an avid Beatles fan. Um, I'm older than you guys, so I grew up while the Beatles were coming into fashion, so to speak. So, and I thought with a little plot twist with the movie, um, why the heck not? I looked at the lyrics, and they're kind of a little deeper than you think they would be. So what we're gonna do is beat some stuff up. All right, let me see if we're actually live. All right, Leo says, are we starting? Is there a YouTube problem again? Yes, there was. Are you out there? Can you hear me? Is my microphone doing okay at this time? All right, in the meantime, I'm going to bring up another file, um, which is what I'll post some of the questions in. Let me try to get that set up. So that's that. Let me try to bring that into here. I'm going to add another one to capture. All right, so we should have a second window here popping up. I'll drag that to the side. I'm probably gonna have to make that bigger at some point. All right, so give the thing a read through. Obviously, on the replay, you can catch us at any time. And let me bring up the file with the questions in it. If anybody was following us, I kept postponing the beginning time of this session because I ran out of time trying to prepare for it. To be honest with you, and what I did was I came up with a whole bunch of answers to some questions, um, and we'll just start going about with them, and I'll pop them over into this blank screen area as things permit, and hopefully I don't get cut off again at that point in time. All right, so I'm just going to jump into this because uh, I don't have a lot of subscribers, and I'm trying to get this channel pumping. So hopefully this is something of interest. So let me throw this in here, and let me see if that's going to come out large enough. Because it might be too small to see. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this screen bigger because we can remove this question for now. And I'll just kind of leave that there so that people kind of have some information about what's going on. I'm just going to give it a second to see if it's coming up. Okay, there. Yeah, what is this poem about? All right, so normally when you read a passage, you should kind of do a few things. First of all, you should read the questions. I'm going to present the questions kind of one at a time here. The other thing is, when you finish reading a passage, you should ask yourself, what's the main idea? What's the central point? What the heck is this thing about? Okay? So, so you may want to spend a few seconds trying to contemplate right now what you think it's about. So what we're going to do is pop up a few answers. I'm going to provide often more than 4 choices, because again I ran out of time and I should have ABCDI'd this. By the way, the SHSAT used to have 5 choices to questions. So, but what I really want you to get out of this exercise today is to just think about what's happening and what's being said and what's not being said. Okay? So let's run through the choices. So I think most people, once they read the passage, they'll say something like this. Let me post this. Most people will say something like this, that the main idea is clearly about him being sad over his girlfriend leaving him. The question is it? And the prose and the narrative seems to back that up. And most people, and I've started working with a group of people yesterday to try to write these questions up with me, but we ran out of time ourselves. Doing this is a little harder than it may appear to be. All right, in any event, so what is the poem about? Is somebody leaving? Right? We have this issue that something happened yesterday. His troubles were so far away, and that she had to go and she wouldn't say why. So somebody did leave. The other issue is it just about somebody leaving though? Or is it deeper than that? Is it only that? Because we have this concept of bestness. How do we give the best answer? Okay? Another issue is that things were easier before. He seems to indicate that repeatedly. Okay? And by the way, we know it's a he because he says, I'm not half the man I used to be. I could have wrote that up as one of the questions as well. All right? We're not quite sure who he is. We actually know he's one of the Beatles and so on, but we don't know if this is really a true story or not. So at this point, we're speculating. There's also other speculations in real life based on the story. But we're going to stick with literally what the poem says. Okay? And I'm saying that the lyrics of this song is a poem. Okay? By the way, before we start, it is broken down into normal things. There is stanzas, right? It rhymes. There's a lot of repetition, not only in words like the word yesterday, but in the way the phraseology and the lines are written out normally. Okay? There's a weird thing about this, especially if you go on the internet and you look up the actual original narrative and so on of it. Some of the original images of the words, I believe that where they were written down on an old piece of paper and so on, there's no punctuation. Normally in a poem there's punctuation. There's a couple of commas and it looks like a couple of periods. But there's no exclamation points, there's no things. So it seems like in some cases in this poem, we can throw in an interpretation capability, which is weird. But then again, that's what poetry is about a lot of times. All right? So let me bring this back up. I have a whole bunch of split screens showing here. So I'm trying to go through my notes, what's showing on the screen, making sure this is keep going live and so on. What about, so we think somebody's leaving, things were easier before. Okay, is that what the whole thing is about though? What is the whole poem about? Not just subparts. We're not talking about sub-central ideas, sub-main ideas. We're talking about what is the whole passage about? Is it just about the things were easier before? Certainly they were. We have his saying they were. Okay? They were. There's troubles now, and previously there wasn't. So it was definitely easy before. The author longs for yesterday and what it meant. That seems to be a reoccurring theme in the whole passage. So this seems to be the most likely answer so far. The author said something wrong. Do we take the words "I said something wrong" literally, or not? And is the poem about him saying something wrong, or is it deeper than that, or is it slightly related to that? Okay, because again, we're kind of looking for the best answer here. The author longs for his relationship with her. Okay, who's her? We're not sure yet. But could that be it? Okay. And could it be just generally deeper, that losing the one you love to mistakes that time can't come to fix? Because if he said something wrong to her, if indeed that's what the passage says, then is that what the whole thing is about? Okay, what I like to do is when we run through what the main idea of something is about, first of all, you can look at the title. Okay, that's one way to do it. Because we talked about what the main idea was. I wrote it down at the bottom here. But also, what is the poem about? Kind of can indicate a main idea question as well. So first of all, we look at the title. It seems to be talking about yesterday. Something is significant about yesterday. The second thing we do is look at any illustrations. It turns out this passage has no illustrations. And by the way, the SHSAT used to not have titles on passages. Now it does. Okay. The third thing we can do to figure out the main idea is to look at the very beginning of a passage. Okay, he starts out by saying, yesterday all my troubles seemed so far away. Now it looks like they're here. They're going to stay. The troubles I have now, they're going to stick with me. Okay, yesterday they didn't seem to be there. Today they do. Okay, another way to look for the main idea is look at the end of a passage. Now he uses repetition. The last two stanzas are repeated of two other stanzas. But his last stanza is basically, yesterday love was such an easy game to play. Now I need a place to hide away. Oh, I believe in yesterday. So there's this reoccurring thing. He's even starting out by saying yesterday. La da 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 da. Dee 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 dee. Oh, I believe in yesterday. So yesterday is a reoccurring theme here. The repetition, he's emphasizing the significance of the timeline of yesterday, right? So it was just yesterday in and of itself the main idea, though. No, that's too loose, okay? And then there's another way to get a main idea, which is that if the title doesn't help, and the beginning doesn't help, and the illustration doesn't help, and the end doesn't help, you have to absorb the whole passage and just eat it up and trying to figure out what's really going on here, what's not being said, what's being said, things like that, okay? So in bullet items like this, we can rule certain ones out. Like, is it just about somebody leaving? No, it's deeper than that. Is it just about things being easier before? No. Is it just about yesterday? No. Is it just about the author maybe saying something wrong? No. Is the author longing for his relationship with her? Yeah, that seems to be one of the central things going on here. But what about it? Is that deep enough? The author longs for yesterday and what it meant. That seems to conglomerate everything here. And the last one, even though it might be true, kind of goes a little bit to left field. Okay? So what we're trying to do is analyze these things. And by the way, on the real test, whether this is a state test, the SAT, the SHSAT, 1,000 things, you're going to have to run through a lot of things here. All right? And just see which one leaps out best. And again, I probably, as a test writer, because I'm writing the questions here, I would have reduced some of these here. But you as the test taker, you have to analyze all these and really rip them to pieces sometimes and figure out which thing here really leaps out or not. Okay? Same with the second question. Is the author angry? To me, not much indicates that the author is angry, but he could be. But we don't have much to infer here that he's literally, truly angry. He seems more sad than anything. Okay? So he can be angry and sad, okay? But sadness seems to be the better of the two. And there's a few things in the lines that tell us that. There's a shadow hanging over me. That's a very, very deep prose there, right? And somebody left him. We all can understand that feeling. It's a pretty emotional thing, especially, if it's somebody he loved. He's mentioned love is a game that gets played. So he was obviously in love with this person. Although it seems, right? The problem with the poem is there could be figurative language here. Now, there is a slight difference in using this song as the passage, which is that he's writing a song, which is different than just writing an outright poem, even though the lyrics can be formed here in a poetic form. There's another issue, too, which is that he almost has haiku criteria here, which is at the time, and even still the case now, we do know that this is a song. And most songs get radio play from like around 3.5 minutes to 4.5 minutes. So let's say 4 minutes. That used to be based on physical criteria, like a 45 or a 78 record could only be fit in a certain amount of thing. Or even if you put an album with, say, six songs in it, it can only fit so much physically on the vinyl, right? And even though that was true then, it's not true now. We have digital capabilities and so on. And the Beatles were some of the first groups to break the 3 of the 4 minute songs on the radio, which impacted their production of doing albums, right? Producing a song for the radio is different than just sitting down and just writing a poem. We all can read lyrics and things like that. So it's not exactly the same. So an author communicating in a song is going to put other things there. So he may have chinced basically on one emotion or another. But he's definitely sad. It's pretty clear he's sad. So I don't think there's too much deep figurativeness going on there. I think it's clearly that he's sad. Okay, he's upset. He's also upset too. But the sadness, upsetness, I think so. So he could be all three so far. He could be angry, sad, and upset. Okay? Bitter? Yeah, I think there's a part of that is bitter too, because, first of all, he's half the man he used to be. He seems to want to go and hide away, right? Bitterness is the same way. This woman left me. Maybe I said something, maybe I didn't. Hey, she can't even tell me why she left. That ain't good, right? So he's not just upset about it. He could be pretty pissed off about it, right? Regretful too. If indeed he did say something to her, then he's going to be regretful about it. And at that point, if he said something to her too, he might even just be straight out guilty. He feels guilty. That's why he wants to run and hide away, perhaps. Or he has a shadow hangover. Man, I suck. I deserve to be gloomy. That kind of a thing. But you have to take these 6 answers and kind of rank them. And then defend them. Sometimes the passage gives the answer straight out. And sometimes we just have to get a feel. Both literally what the author says and figuratively. And put 2 and 2 together. And do inferences and do make our own experiences. And on something like this, we know that in the case of Paul McCartney, who was the main author of this passage, he's been interviewed about this, and he's given reasons and so on and things like that. And the funny thing about something like that, by the way, is that history is weird because somebody who was sitting behind him, like Lennon or Ringo or whatever, or George Harrison, might say, you know what, that's not what happened. Something else happened. So it's weird how it transpires. And in fact, he's on record saying years and years later that he thinks the meaning of the story might be different than he originally thought it was. So we'll get to that in a second. But I think we can clearly say that the author's sad, even though all these other things might be true. Maybe not angry, maybe not bitter as much, maybe not guilty, but he's definitely upset. Okay? We don't know if he's regretful because I think there's some ambiguity in the words. So when we try to figure out the literal and the figurativeness, it can get confusing. All right. By the way, I didn't post those, So let me, those were simpler enough. All right, let me bring that up for 1 second. I meant to change the question. So here's the part for that. So my next question is, what does he mean? Yesterday came suddenly. If you go to that stanza. In fact, that's even poetic language. The whole concept of the yesterday concepts that he's bringing across. Yesterday came suddenly. It's almost like he's playing a little game with past, present, and future here. But he's definitely got surprised. So what is he talking about when he's talking about yesterday came suddenly? Let me just make sure this YouTube is still going. Wait, I'm not sure it's going anymore. YouTube. It looks like the screen is frozen. Come on, screen. All right, here we go. Looks like it's going okay. Wait, let me. All right, I popped this in the wrong window, so give this 1 second. Yeah, I just noticed that. All right, there we go. All right, you know what? I'm literally switching between about 5 screens here, and it's getting annoying. So what does he mean? Yesterday came suddenly. He wanted to do something around out of time. Did he want to tell the girl he loved her? Did it have nothing to do with the girl at all? Right? Was he surprised that she left? Is that what's the whole thing about here is about? Right? He wanted to fix a mistake, but he never got the chance. In other words, if he did say something wrong to her, is that maybe what's going on here? So here's one. Well, if we look at that, that could be true, but that's not really what about this question is asking. Okay. Same for the fourth one. This might be true. He feels he could have said something or done more. And in that sense, it came yesterday because he wanted the time to do it, but that doesn't quite answer it. So it's more to the key that he was surprised that she left. By the way, is the sound good today? I'm still trying to tweak all this back and forth. So this one was more of a more simpler question. Okay, let me bring up another question. Who is the she that he's referring to? It's a couple of choices here, and the first obvious choice, again, is most people think that he's writing about his girlfriend. But when you sit and think deeper, is there any other choices going on here? Could this be so figurative that he's doing something like writing about a sports team? Right? Or is he actually writing about a girlfriend? Is he writing about a friend who might be a girl? Right? If we look at it deeper, Is it the case maybe they were roommates, or maybe they were just good friends, and she fell in love with him, and she tried to maybe hit on him romantically or something, and he was like, whoa, I think we're just friends. And is that the thing he said to her that might be bad? Right? There's a couple choices here. So I'm trying to go into different places here and explore what's being said. Because I think when we have more deeper questions and harder passages, these are the kind of things we need to get into. Or is it just his pet? Maybe his pet ran away or got out the door or something. And he's just made this grand thing here, right? Or could it be his mother? So to me personally, his girlfriend and his mother kind of are the two that leap out here. Okay, good. All right, the voice is good? Okay. His girlfriend and his mother seem to be the two that leap out. Wait, this is the screen displaying where I'm at? Because it seems like it hasn't even brought up this question at all for me. Yeah, wait a second. I posted this on the wrong thing again. Ay. Sorry about that. I'm going to get my act together soon. That's why I like the math questions. They're 1 for 1. All right, so you guys, I believe, should be showing the right thing at this point. Yeah, I was going to put down his daughter as one of the choices too. But when you analyze the passage a little deeper, his daughter could have left. She may have left without telling him, or he's just talking about her growing up and maturing, or leaving home, or whatever the case may be. She moved across the country. What I should have left it in. I actually put it in and took it out. In fact, I was talking about it with my daughter. Should that be? Yeah. I moved the. I had the window up higher, and I must have clicked it accidentally, and it slid down. So the thing is, when you look at when it talks about, for instance, love was such an easy game to play, even though he might love his daughter, we normally talk about kind of romantic love as kind of a game, Cupid and all those other kind of things like that. But we normally don't talk about like your love for your mother or your love for your child. We don't normally look at that more as a game. That we look at that a little more serious. So even if daughter was one of the choices, I think it would rule it out. And the fact that he repeats that verse twice. Again, because I think he did that because he wrote a song, but certain poems do this as well. Repetition is an important thing that happens in poetry. And he's really emphasizing that. So, and the fact that he kind of wants to have a place to hide away, I think that's more likely in romantic kind of love kind of situations than if it wasn't a daughter. I'm not saying if your child leaves home or whatever, whether it's under good or bad circumstances, you can still feel sad. There's a hole in your heart, all these kind of things like that. But it's a different feeling. And to me, that love was such an easy game to play line. That kind of throws it out the window that it could be his daughter. And I think what Valerie left with, whether it was girlfriend or his mother. So if it's his girlfriend case, it could just standard situation. They had an argument, or he said something really rude to her, like even as bad as like, I hate you, get out of here, not even realizing that she would actually leave. or he just told her something. The other thing is, is this about his mother dying? Could this be kind of an ode to his mom? And maybe he said something, or not only did he say something, and maybe he's left something unsaid. It doesn't quite say he left something unsaid, but maybe they had an argument a couple of months before she died or something, and he didn't get a chance to speak to her again or something. That kind of a thing. And if you run through the thing, especially figuratively, a lot of this can fall into place with that. Again, the clincher to me is love was such an easy game to play. You're normally not playing a love game with your mom. Some people are weird, and love has different dimensions to it. But most people wouldn't phrase their love for their mother that way, especially if there was some issue there. And it could be his mother leaving, but I doubt that. So it's most likely the she is his girlfriend. Okay, the second runner-up could be his mother. All right, so these are the kind of things you need to look at and kind of rip apart when you're analyzing things like this. All right, let me bring up the next question. All right, I have it in the right place now. So what does he mean when I'm not half the man I used to be? Because that's kind of figurative too. Again, this is a young guy writing this. You have to put the context of that, even though we're not necessarily supposed to know that. So do we take it literally? Like now we a shorter person? Right? So that's ridiculous. He was a better person yesterday. Well, normally when you talk about being cut down to size or something like that, so in this context, he kind of feels like a weasel maybe, or maybe he's just, he's destroyed. He's devastated and heartbroken. I was this good boyfriend yesterday, or good husband yesterday, and now I'm useless. I'm half the person I am, and if I'm a male, then I'm half the man I used to be. Although we have figurativeness of concepts of manly and stuff like that too. So that like I'm not even good enough to have a girlfriend now, that kind of a thing. Like, damn, she left that she didn't even tell me. I must really suck, that kind of a thing, And the thing with the two middle choices, this will happen often on ELA stuff. He was a better person yesterday, which might be true, and he's a worse person today, which might be true. Those are really just opposites of each other. They're both saying the same thing. They're just looking at it from different points of view. So, and this question is not asking for which point of view. It's just asking the whole thing generically and vaguely. What does he mean he's not half the man he used to be? So the two middle choices, they're probably equally true. So if the answer was I was a better person yesterday, then the answer also has to be I was a worse person today. So when you're doing an analysis, you need to look at stuff like that too. So it pretty much rules those two answers out. Okay? And it's really, and the first answer is ridiculous. So we know it's not going to be that. So we kind of skipped around a few issues, which is what's wrong? What the heck is wrong? We talked about what the main idea or what it may have been earlier. But there's actually a plethora of things on here that could be wrong. The obvious one is the whole thing is about as being said about the breakup of a relationship. But, we talked about maybe his mother dying before. Maybe the girlfriend died. Maybe this is all figurativeness for that. Could that be the case? And there were things unsaid, and maybe he literally said something, or maybe not. Okay? Maybe he's just a jerk and feeling bad for himself here. Maybe this is part of a dream. Maybe he's drugged out. A whole bunch of things could be weird here, right? But the top two seem to leap out. It's about the breakup of a relationship with a girl, or she died, or his mother died. Those seem to be like the top three things here. It's not something as simple as like she had an early flight, or she forgot to tell him she was supposed to go to work that morning, and he just created this grandiose, poetic situation based on that. Those two kind of answers seem ridiculous. He could be dreamy, he could be on drugs. We've seen this play out in cliffhangers of TV shows and all this other kind of stuff, where we get surprised, where you can't even really infer the thing. I don't think this is going there. So most likely it's about the breakup of a relationship, though. Why does he need a place to hide away? He's talking about half the man he used to be. He needs a place to hide away. All these kind of things like that. There's always the silly answer, like the police would arrest him otherwise, right? There's no indication here about that. And on that note, maybe this is all about him doing something mischievous, or he was doing something illegal. But that's analyzing this ridiculously, okay? So when you do your inferences and things like that, you don't really want to go that far and that deep in this kind of stuff. What does he need? Why does he need to hide a place? Figure out yourself. If your girlfriend left and you're feeling sad about it, you may feel happy about it, right? But he seems to indicate that he was feeling sad about it. What transpired is too hard for him to deal with. Who doesn't want to just squirrel away and lock yourself in a room and go cry, or just be miserable, not go out for a few days? So we can relate to that. He wants to be alone. Yeah, I think so. But that's part of the second bullet. And I think what transpired is too hard for him to deal with. Overrules he wants to be alone. I think he wants to be alone might be a subset of what transpired is too hard for him to deal with. He's afraid of the future. He might be. He might be. Especially since he said, oh my God, my whole life was built around being with this girl, and now she's not there. What the hell am I going to do? Anybody who's gone through a divorce or a breakup, or just, even when there's no argument, like your brother goes off to college, or your daughter goes off to school, or somebody goes on vacation for 2 weeks, you could feel lonely. You need a place to hide away. Like, let me get out of here. I don't know how to deal with myself, that kind of a thing. Maybe you became so dependent on the other person and so on. All right, so there's stuff like that has to go on and think about. So the next question is kind of deeper, and by the way, this is more questions than you would ever be asked in a passage. And this one's up for controversy because I discussed this with a few people, and everybody seems to have their own a view of what might be happening here when he says he said something wrong. Again, there's no punctuation in this poem, except for a comma here and there for the most part. So the question is, what is he trying to say? All right? So when he says he asked her why she had to go, so he knows she's going. She wouldn't say why. Right? But then he says he said something wrong. Or at least that's what the line is written as. Let me go back to the line. I said something wrong. Now, there's two ways, in my opinion, to interpret that. One is he's saying, I said something wrong to her. The other is that, well, I don't know why she went away. In other words, if he said something wrong to her, he kind of knows why she went away. He pissed her off enough or hurt her enough that she was like, I'm getting the hell out of here. Right? All right? So I think there's an interpretation where he says, I said something wrong to her, where he's just saying why she had to go, I don't know, she wouldn't say. And then he said to himself, hey, you know what? Something's wrong. Something wrong. There is something wrong here. I said something wrong here. All right? And now I long for yesterday. So there's kind of a bunch of things here. So one is, if we take this literally, he knows he said something bad to her. The other is he's confused. He may or may not have said something bad to her, but he's still confused why she left. Another is that he's blaming her. Okay, that one is a weak one. He longs for the non-troubles of yesterday. Yeah, he does. He does. That's what a lot of this narrative is about. That's what a lot of the passage is about. But that's not what he's talking about when he's saying, I said something wrong. It's not about him longing for it. Maybe if he said something wrong and he longs for it, or whatever the circumstance was. Or he may have had troubles all along and now he's just realizing it. Maybe that's what's suddenly surprising about this whole passage. Maybe there were problems with him all along. He may be longing for yesterday, but now he's realizing, you know what, I screwed up yesterday. And it slapped me in the face that I made a big mistake in my life. That kind of a thing. Yes, Leo, that's true. And we'll get to that in a second. I think I have one more question, and we'll get to that. We'll get to that. No, actually, this is my last question. All right, so we'll get to it now. Let's see, how long was this so far? Because I thought it was going to take about half an hour. It's 42 minutes already. Yeah, here's the thing. There's two things with the passage. And I teach this even when I'm going down to, say, like a grade 3 ELA test. We're not supposed to know about the outside world. So if the passage was, say, about the Yankees, and you're a really avid baseball fan, and Yankees is your best team, and it mentions something about Babe Ruth or Mickey Mantle or a current player, and about their average or something, and let's say they make a mistake, and a question is based on that, whether it was a mistake or not, you are not supposed to add your additional knowledge to it. Okay? So the fact that we know something about Paul's real life and how this may have affected him isn't supposed to affect our answers to questions like this. Because the passage is supposed to stay by itself. We are only allowed to do inferences. Any facts have to come from the passage, not from our independent third-party knowledge. This is true of even when you do like social studies tests and things like that. Now that said, we're allowed to use common knowledge stuff. Like if the passage is about George Washington, it's pretty reasonable to expect that a person taking the SHSAT knows that George Washington used to be a president, and maybe even that he was the first president, and a whole bunch of other facts about him chopping down a cherry tree. That's a reasonable expectation of the knowledge about him. But if, like, you may or may not have known that George Washington was a surveyor, and that he made exactly where he lived and all the kind of things like that. So that's going too deep. So common knowledge, really super top level, we can deal with. Now to kind of move away from the SHSAT, the standardized test aspect of this, yeah, Paul, the chronology of Paul's thing, if I have it right, is when he wrote this, he actually had a girlfriend that he had for a few years after he wrote the song. So the song is definitely not about the breakup of her. Now, it could have been about the breakup of a girl just before him. It could have been. So this is where it gets interesting. And I made a reference to Paul making a statement years later. And I think the statement he made was 20 or 30 years later. That when his mother died, he made a stupid comment based on how is the family going to live without her income. And he made the comment, I think, to his father because he didn't know how to react to his mother's death. I believe he was 14 at the time. And he knows he made a stupid comment, and as soon as it came out of his mouth, he knew it was the wrong thing to say. So connecting the dots, I believe somebody asked him, is this song really about your mother? And his response was something like, I think it could be about her. So that's where it gets interesting. Because he doesn't say, yes, you know what, it really was about her. He just says, I think it was about her. So was it about her and Paul was just being mischievous? Or was it about her and Paul was just leaving mystery into the song? Because some authors believe that once they create a song or a passage or a story, that it's up to the audience or the reader to make their own interpretations out of it. Somebody like J.K. Rowling with the Harry Potter series, she seems to like to keep a tight rein on all the characters and the setting and the meanings and who was who and who was what and all those stuff. Where other authors are like, nope, I release this to the free world and it's up to your interpretation. But it was interesting that Paul pretty much responded immediately and said, I think it may have been about my mother as well, something like that. So he left an open-ended that it could still be about a girlfriend, and that maybe in the back of his mind subconsciously he was thinking about making that silly comment about his mother dying, right? So it's hard to say. All right. So what I wanted to do here was just give a light kind of overgoing of maybe like how a test writer might write up some questions, because I think that's one perspective that test takers don't often have. You're trying to struggle often to just get the right answer, or you have to be asking yourself questions like, why was this question included in the first place? Why is this answer here? What does it mean? And in fact, on that note, there's often a who cares overall response that I like to use in the ELA, which is when you get to a question and answer, ask yourself who cares. And it's not who cares in the sense that like I could care less if I get the question right or not. It's why is the question here? Why is it significant? Why is it important? That kind of a thing. All right? So I think this would have been a little better if I actually came up with the A, B, C, or D things. But it goes to show that your goal is to rank the answers. And sometimes a lot of answers are very close to each other. It took me actually a while to come up with these, especially since I talked to other people about it and so on too. They gave me ideas to throw into here. So this is a conglomeration of a few people. But in any event, this is the analysis you have to do. We're going for 47 minutes here, but you have to do this. You have to get the passage, get the essence of it, right? I beat it to death. We beat each choice to death there. And just make a decision. What leaps out here? What's significant? What's important? What can I infer? And when you do the inferences, you really have to go and look them up in the passage. And the thing about poems is that it's hard because even in a regular passage, when it's written in plain English, there's still inferences you have to make sometimes. But normally that's clearer, and you can look it up and say, this is here, and I can put two together. Right? With a poem, there's an extra level of indirection. Because we do have the question, like, who is the she? We're still not 100% sure it was really about a girlfriend. Right? And we think he said, but so we have to make all those inferences. And that's the best we can do here. We have to tap into common things that are going on in everybody's lives and try to make an interpretation of the passage you're seeing that's rational and pragmatic, right? The esoteric stuff, when two answers get close, you really have to look at them and just beat them both to death. Go back to the passage, go deeper into what's being said or not. And that's the main things here. All right, so tried to make this a little fun. By the way, if I bring back, let me bring back the original. I don't know if you got to see. Let me bring back the window with the riddle. So there's a riddle here. Oh, that's a good question. That's hard. That's hard. I use a lot of third-party material that's already written. Some of the stuff is better when you're in person with me, because I build up from baby steps into more conglomerate stuff, and the baby steps I'm not sure they would work online here. And if we just jump into some stuff, it could be too random. But I'll think about that. That's something I need to do. I need to get more material into revising and editing. The SHSAT didn't always have that part of it, and it only came out now. I think this is going to be the third SHSAT with that, or maybe the fourth one. So for years, I didn't have to worry about something like that. And when I used to do it, the New York State ELA test used to have revising and editing in it, and they took it away. But it was much, 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 much more simple than anything that would ever be in the SHSAT. So I'll have to think about that. I already was thinking about it. The reason that's significant is because you can get a lot of points by getting all those questions correct. And it would be to everybody's advantage to do that. A lot of people might say, well, I'm not good in revising editing, and I'll just skip that section. Yeah, but you're throwing away points twice. You're throwing away points by not answering that section, and because of the way the SHSAT's graded, it's a curve on two separate parts that are added together. There's multiple curves that happen on both parts. So you want to ace one part as good as you can. And basically what it means is theoretically it means the more questions you get answered correctly in one section, the higher your score is going to be based on the number of correct answers you get. So if you get 10 correct answers, they might be 1 point each. If you get 20 correct answers, they may eventually at the end be worth 2, 3, 4, 5, in some cases even worth 15 points each. And if you get, say, all the reading comprehension right, you might be getting maybe 80% right and getting, say, 250 SHSAT points out of that. But if you can ace the revising and editing section and start getting 15 points for each of those, because once you get past like question 30, 38 or something, that's when the bump up really happens on the different sections here. So if you can get ace the reading comprehension part completely, you want to ace the revising and editing part as well. Because you don't just want, say, 80 on each section, or even 90 in each section. You want as close to 100 as possible on one section. Obviously, you can get close to 100 on both sections. That's great. Because of the way the scoring happens, you really want to ace one part. And it would be a shame for kids to skip the revising and editing part. Anyway, that's something that I have to work on. I do have material that I bring with me when I do live one-to-one tutoring. By the way, I'm Greg from Greg's Tutoring. Let me throw that at the end of this thing here for anybody who's gotten to the end of this. Actually, let me bring it up here. I'm trying to juggle the live streams between my schedule and other things as well. So let me do a PSAT on here. Let's see. And by the way, for anybody who got to the end, the answer to the riddle is Paul. So that's more of a, it's not really a SHSAT question, it's just a riddle. But what you need to do is go through each person and make believe they are lying, and then you have to run through the other choices to see what might be what with the other people. And it turns out that Paul is actually in first place. All right, with that, people, peace out, everybody. Have a great day. Enjoy Tyler's stream for anybody who's going to see that. And everybody have a great day. I'm not sure when I'm going to be streaming again. Probably another day this week. All right. And I tend to favor the weekends at the moment, but that may not be true consistently. And I'm going to alternate between ELA and the math section back and forth, and through the different subtopics of each. I already have, and also between grade 8 and grade 9 as well. All right, guys, take it easy, people.